Hello and a very good evening. You're watching the news at 6 with me, Frank Pereira. Here are the headlines this evening. India and Japan sign landmark civil nuclear deal. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says historic step reflects commitment of both nations in the relationship. Bank ATMs open to long queues. RBI reassures public, urges people to exercise patience and exchange notes at their convenience. Airfares are all set to increase. Government decides to levy up to 8,500 rupees per flight on major routes to fund regional air connectivity scheme. And second night of protests in the US against President-elect Donald Trump turned violent in Oregon. Police arrest 29 people. Trump calls demonstrations unfair and incited by media. Well, the long-pending civil nuclear deal between India and Japan was signed today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Japanese counterpart Shinzo Abe witnessed the signing of the crucial deal, negotiations for which had been going on for 6 years. The two countries had reached a broad agreement last December during Abe's visit to India. But Japan saw strong political resistance to the deal, especially after the 2011 disaster at the Fukushima nuclear power plant.
India and Japan signed the landmark civil nuclear deal on Friday after summit-level talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his counterpart Shinzo Abe. The deal that comes after 6 years of negotiations will allow Japan to export nuclear technology to India, making it the first non-NPT signatory to have such a deal with Tokyo. 12 other pacts were also signed between both countries in areas of trade and investment, skill and infrastructure development, agriculture and food industries, marine and earth sciences, and cooperation in sports and cultural exchange.
Today's signing of the agreement for cooperation in peaceful use of nuclear energy marks a historic step in our engagement to build a clean energy partnership. Our cooperation in this field will help us combat the challenge of climate change. I also acknowledge the special significance that such an agreement has for Japan. I thank Prime Minister Abe, the Japanese government, and the Parliament for the support to this agreement.
Earlier, both Prime Ministers held wide-ranging talks on ways to enhance ties in a broad range of areas. Terrorism remained the main agenda of discussion.
As democracies, we support openness, transparency, and the rule of law. We are also united in our resolve to combat the menace of terrorism, especially cross-border terrorism.
Prime Minister Modi also called on Japanese Emperor Akihito to discuss the common bonds between India and Japan and also the future of Asia. Modi once again invited Japanese companies to invest in India, saying that substantial finances are needed for the country's development. He assured them that reforms are underway to make India the world's most open economy.
Creating an enabling environment for business and attracting investments remains my top priority. Stable, predictable, and transparent regulations are redefining the nature of doing business in India. E-governance is no longer just a fancy buzzword, but a basic facility.
The Prime Minister also referred to the progress on the GST regime, emphasizing that his government is pursuing a new direction of economic reforms. In line with the government's ease of doing business policy, India has already given visa on arrival facilities to all Japanese visitors and 10 years visa to Japanese businessmen. With inputs from Akhilesh Suman, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, thousands of people stood for hours outside ATMs which reopened on Thursday. Many places were clearly not equipped to deal with the rush as the ATMs failed to work in several cities. From Delhi and Mumbai to Kolkata, Chennai and Bengaluru, when they finally started functioning, most ATMs ran out of cash early. The RBI once again reassured the public that there was enough cash to meet requirements and that people should visit the banks at their convenience.
Friday was the second day the banks reopened and ATMs started functioning after demonetization, but there was little relief for the common man or even for bank employees. Reports of several ATMs being shut or having no cash to dispense trickled in from several cities, including all 4 metros, even as some people waiting in queues had a meltdown.
ATMs are not working, we don't have cash and it's very hard for us.
पता नहीं अभी कितना वक्त और लगता है यहाँ पर जो है उधर ऑफिस से फ़ोन आ रहे हैं कि भाई तुम कहाँ हो या करेंसी भी चेंज करानी है क्योंकि घर चलाना है और उधर ऑफिस में क्या नाम है गालियाँ खाने को मिलेंगी बॉस की जो है.
Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi joined a queue at an ATM in central Delhi. The crowd swelled as news of his presence spread. Gandhi said he was there to share the troubles of the common man.
सरकार इनके लिए चलनी चाहिए, 15-20 लोगों के लिए नहीं चलनी चाहिए. अगर वो 15-20 लोग यहाँ नहीं खड़े हैं, उनको तो कोई कठिनाई नहीं हो रही ना, इनको कठिनाई हो रही है. यहाँ पे घंटों से लाइन में खड़े, मैं इनके साथ खड़े होना.
Meanwhile, BJP President Amit Shah took a dig at rival parties and said the demonetization has exposed them. He also added that the move has made some political parties poorer.
चुनाव में से कालाधन बाहर हो जाएगा और देश की अर्थतंत्र में से कालाधन बाहर हो जाएगा. इससे राजनीतिक दलों को क्या पीड़ा हो सकती है मेरी समझ में नहीं आ रहा. और जिस प्रकार का माहौल राजनीतिक दल बनाना चाहते हैं, मैं उनसे ये सवाल पूछना चाहता हूं कि आप काले धन के समर्थन में है या काले धन के खिलाफ है. मोदी सरकार ने जो कड़ा कदम उठाया है, इसकी आलोचना कर उन्होंने जनता को अपना असली चेहरा दिखा देने का काम किया है.
However, to ease things a little, banks have waived the surcharge for using ATMs of different banks for now. The State Bank of India has made separate queues for women and senior citizens and a separate window for deposit and exchange at all its branches. With inputs from Anu Diwan, Bureau Report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, in other news now, domestic airfares are all set to go up by a minimum of 1% after the government announced new taxes to fund the ambitious regional connectivity scheme, UDAN. According to the Civil Aviation Secretary, taxes could go up by 8,500 per flight depending on the number of seats on that particular flight. The Aviation Ministry will impose a levy on every departure on major air routes including New Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad, Bengaluru and Kolkata. Well, for flights up to 1,000 kilometers, the levy will be 7,500 rupees. For flights between 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers, it will be 8,000. While for flights beyond 1,500 kilometers, the levy will be 8,500 rupees. UDAN was announced last month, under which fares will be capped at 2,500 rupees for half of the seats in 1-hour flights. Through its scheme, the government seeks to connect 22 airports in smaller cities to make flying more affordable for the masses. The levy will come into effect from December.
जो मेजर रूट्स पर जो हवाई जहाज चलेंगे, उन मेजर रूट्स पर ये लेवी लगाई गई है. प्रति फ्लाइट के बेसिस पर, ये पर पैसेंजर बेसिस पर नहीं है. और उस लेवी से जो पैसा आएगा, वही पैसा हम उन यात्रियों को देंगे जो छोटे शहरों से उड़ना चाहेंगे 2,500 रुपए के टिकट पर.
Well, the Sensex crashed close to 700 points to drop below the key 27,000 level as the initial euphoria post-Donald Trump's victory in the United States presidential elections faded. Nifty too broke 8,300 mark, plunging to its lowest closing since June 30th this year. The closing figures were not very promising, with the BSE Sensex closing at 26,818.82 points, down 2.54%. The NSE Nifty closed at 8,296.30 points. This was the biggest single day fall for the Sensex in over 4 months. The rupee too breached the 67 mark against the US dollar by plunging 59 paise to 67.22. Also impacting sentiment was demonetization that dampened sentiment across sectors, especially real estate, gems and jewelry and consumption segments. Meanwhile, the political slugfest over the SYL Canal issue intensified with the state units of both national parties, Congress and the BJP, taking opposite stands. With polls around the corner in Punjab, the Aam Aadmi Party and ruling SAD also joined the ongoing verbal duel over the issue.
The Supreme Court verdict on the SYL Canal issue has become a full-blown political battle, with leaders taking state-specific stands. While the Punjab government, led by Shiromani Akali Dal and BJP, said it will urge the president not to accept the Supreme Court's opinion on this issue, the opposition Congress and Aam Aadmi Party expressed dismay over the verdict and held the ruling party responsible for this.
कैबिनेट ने आज फैसला किया है कि पंजाब के पास कोई पानी नहीं है देने के लिए, और फैसला किया कैबिनेट ने कि एक बूंद पानी नहीं देंगे और ना किसी को कंस्ट्रक्शन करने देंगे।
देश की अर्थव्यवस्था को मजबूत करने के लिए पंजाब के किसान को मजबूत करना जरूरी है, और उसको मजबूत करने के लिए हमें पानी चाहिए, और उतना पानी जितना चाहिए वो हमारे पास नहीं है, इसलिए हम किसी को भी पानी देने की समर्था में नहीं है।
आज जैसे सारे एमएलए ये फैसला कर लिया है कि पंजाब के कांग्रेस के सारे एमएलए कल नूं सवेरे 10 बजे जाके स्पीकर नूं अस्तीफा देणगे। अजिही सरकार बादलों की जिसने पंजाब के नाल धरोह कीता है, पंजाब के खिलाफ फैसला कराया है, ऐसी मंग करते हैं कि मुख्यमंत्री अस्तीफा देण, सरकार अस्तीफा देवे, क्योंकि यह पंजाब के हितों की राखी करने दे विच नाकामयाब रहे है।
पंजाब के पास पानी नहीं है अपना, वो पताल में चला गया पानी, वहाँ से पानी निकाल रहे हैं, तो देंगे किसको? जब पानी देने को नहीं है तो फिर SYL किस लिए?
However, state units of both the Congress and the BJP differed from their Punjab counterparts and welcomed the Supreme Court verdict.
एक्स्ट्रा पानी नहीं मांग रहे हैं, 3.5 MF हमारा है और इससे ज़्यादा पंजाब का है, उससे ज़्यादा राजस्थान का है, इसलिए सब स्टेट का उनका जो एग्रीमेंट के हिसाब से पानी लाना है उतना ही विषय है।
फैसले का हम स्वागत करते हैं, और अब मैं उम्मीद करूंगा कि केंद्र सरकार हरियाणा के साथ न्याय करते हुए, फैसले का पालन करते हुए तुरंत SYL को पूरा करा के हरियाणा के हिस्से का पानी हरियाणा को दिलाने का काम करेगा।
भारतीय जनता पार्टी की प्रदेश में भी, केंद्र में भी और पंजाब में भी उनकी सहयोगी सरकार है। मैं उम्मीद रखूंगा कि जल्द से जल्द इस साल के अंत से पहले सतलुज यमुना लिंक का निर्माण कार्य भारतीय जनता पार्टी पूरी तौर पर करवाने का काम करे।
On Thursday, the Supreme Court termed the Punjab Termination of Agreements Act 2004 as unconstitutional, saying that Punjab could not have taken a unilateral decision to terminate the water sharing agreement with Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Rajasthan, Jammu and Kashmir, Delhi and Chandigarh. Vishal Dahiya, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, let's now get you a roundup of the other national news nationwide. The Supreme Court on Friday upheld its decision that state governments have right to levy entry tax on goods entering their territory. The state does not require the consent of the president. The court said that there cannot be a discrimination between goods entering its area, and that if a state imposes entry tax on products made within the state, it could not impose higher tax on the identical products entering from other states. The Supreme Court on Friday said that there is an aggravation of Maoist situation and asked the government to find a peaceful solution to tackle the issue. The court also drew an assurance from the Chhattisgarh government that it will not arrest or detain Delhi University professor Nandini Sundar until the next day of the hearing of her case. 12 people were killed and many injured on Friday in a Shahibabad garment factory fire in Ghaziabad. Police were deployed in large numbers to maintain law and order. 14 fire tenders reached the spot to douse the fire that broke out early in the morning. The locals, however, alleged there was a delay in action by the police and the fire department. A short circuit is being suspected to be the cause of the fire. Authorities imposed curfew in some parts of Srinagar and restrictions were made in other sensitive areas of Kashmir to foil the separatists' plan of holding a congregation at Jamia Masjid in Old City. Normal life remained crippled in Kashmir for the 126th consecutive day after a shutdown call by separatists. The Enforcement Directorate on Friday attached 1,700 crore rupees worth of personal shares of UB Group chief Vijay Mallya and his associate firms in connection with the money laundering case involving the liquor baron. The move comes after the Special Court on Prevention of Money Laundering Act declared him a proclaimed offender and directed the seizure of his shares. It's time for a short break now, but news and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
जब बीजेपी विकास की बात करती है तो बीच बीच में मैंने देखा है कि राम मंदिर को लेकर भी कुछ ओवरटोन सुनाई पड़ती हैं। कितना बड़ा मुद्दा ये इस चुनाव में रहेगा?
मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा राम मंदिर का मुद्दा राजनीतिक मुद्दा नहीं है और आप जैसे लोगों के द्वारा उठाया जाता है। सुनो तो, आप ये सवाल नहीं पूछती तो मैंने नहीं जवाब देता।
सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक्स को एक चुनावी मुद्दा बनाना कितना जस्टिफाइड है?
मुद्दा हमारा जो स्ट्रेटजीकार लोग हैं जो चुनाव लड़ाते हैं वो मुद्दे सुनिश्चित करेंगे।
Watch to the point with Union Minister Kalraj Mishra only on Rajya Sabha television.
The sacred relics of Buddha were unearthed in Piprava in Uttar Pradesh. Buddhist monks from all over the world visit the National Museum to pay their respects. These charred bone fragments of Buddha are housed in the gold canopy gifted by the royal family of Thailand.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, Donald Trump may have won the US presidential election, but that hasn't stopped protests against him. Demonstrators chanted slogans denouncing the president-elect, saying he did not represent them. There are also reports that there has been an uptick in attacks on minorities since the result was announced.
Protests across several states in the US continued on the second day after Donald Trump was declared the winner of the presidential race. Protesters are increasingly voicing fears that the real estate mogul's political triumph would deal a blow to civil rights. In Oakland, California, hundreds walked onto the highway, the Interstate 580, bringing traffic to a standstill. Police were close on hand even though the protests were mostly peaceful and orderly. In Portland, Oregon, however, the protests were more disorderly. Protesters threw fireworks in the direction of the police and damaged cars in a dealership lot. Some protesters sprayed graffiti on cars and buildings and smashed storefront windows. The demonstration continued into early morning even as a handful of protesters were arrested and some had pepper spray and rubber bullets directed towards them. The situation was somewhat similar in a lot of other states, including New York, Washington, Maryland, and Colorado. Security was beefed up for two of Donald Trump's marquee properties that have become protest rallying points. Security fences were erected around his newly opened Pennsylvania Avenue Hotel in Washington and the high-rise Trump Tower in Manhattan. Some protesters also marched from the White House to the Trump International Hotel blocks away, chanting "Love Trump's Hate." Civil rights groups and police have reported an uptick in attacks on members of minority groups, some of them by people claiming to support the president-elect. On the flip side, there are also reports of Trump opponents lashing out against those supporting him. More anti-Trump demonstrations are planned for the weekend. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Staying on with international news now, a suicide car bomber struck the German consulate in the northern Afghan city of Mazar-e-Sharif, killing at least half a dozen people and wounding 120 others. The bombing on Thursday was claimed by Taliban. Here's a report. A Taliban suicide bomber drove a truck loaded with explosives into the German consulate in northern Afghanistan, killing at least 6 people and wounding more than 100. The truck exploded at the entrance of the consulate in the city of Mazar-e-Sharif, destroying the gate and wall just before midnight on November 10th.
بسیار انفجار بسیار شدید بسیار زیاد شیشه ها مگه شکست زخمی کارشیم از توسط شیشه دکان تاریک شد برقم وقت رفت دود خاک باد یا قسم بارد بویک خاک بویک.
A spokesman for the German Foreign Ministry said that all of its 24 staff escaped the attack safe and uninjured and were evacuated while Afghan security forces and NATO special forces had repulsed the heavily armed attackers.
شخص انتحار کننده یک اراده واسطه باربری مملو از مواد انفجاری خود اندنمی ساحه که نزدیکی کنسولگری کشور دوست آلمان در مزار شریف است میرسانه و انفجار میده که از اثر انفجار
The Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack, saying it was revenge for US airstrikes last week that killed 32 civilians near the northern city of Kunduz. President Ashraf Ghani called the attack a crime against humanity and all international laws. The heavily protected German consulate is located in a large building close to the famous Blue Mosque in the center of Mazar-e-Sharif, where the Indian consulate was also attacked by militants earlier this year. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. Well, here's a roundup of the other international news and global buzz. Interpol has elected China's Security Vice Minister Meng Hongwei as its president. Meng has been chosen for a 4-year term at the agency's 85th members meeting in Indonesia. The move hands China another landing spot on an international agency and will likely help facilitate its high-profile efforts to track down Chinese fugitive officials who have fled the country. North Korea's state media today released still photographs of Kim Jong-un inspecting military drills on Mahap Islet near the border of South Korea. The photographs showed artillery shells being fired and Kim looking at the military firing drills through binoculars. KRT said that the drills were staged by the defense detachment on Mahap Islet in the western sector of the front, which is close to South Korea's Bangyong Island. However, it did not give the date of the exercise as it customarily reports activities of its leader without dates or locations. Rescuers in northern China recovered the dead body of a 6-year-old boy who had been stuck in a well for over 100 hours. The boy accidentally fell into an abandoned well that measured 40 meters deep on Sunday in China's Hebei province. Media reports claimed 165 large machinery and more than 500 professional rescuers and volunteers took part in the rescue. And finally, on to some sports news now, where India ended day 3 of the first test in Rajkot at a total of 319 for the loss of 4 wickets after centuries from Murli Vijay and Cheteshwar Pujara. Pujara scored 124 runs while Vijay scored 126. The hosts lost the wickets of Vijay and Amit Mishra just before stumps to give England a glimmer of hope. Murli Vijay ended his 1-year wait for a ton as he broke the deadlock and scored his 7th ton to combine with Cheteshwar Pujara and lead the hosts' fight back. For England, Stuart Broad, Zafar Ansari, Adil Rashid and all-rounder Ben Stokes claimed a wicket each.
Here we go, another one.
Well, here's a roundup of the other sports news in Sports Beat. Neymar scored his 50th international goal as Brazil thrashed arch rivals Argentina 3-0 in their 2018 World Cup qualifying duel in Belo Horizonte. Barcelona superstar Neymar took his tally to 50 goals in 74 games as Brazil recorded their 5th consecutive victory under new coach Tite to remain on top of South America's qualification table. Brazil now head the 10-team round-robin competition with 24 points from 11 games. Tennis star Maria Sharapova will be reinstated as a UN Goodwill Ambassador once her reduced 15-month suspension expires in April 2017. The UN Development Programme had ended their 9-year relationship with the player in March this year after she admitted to consuming meldonium, a banned substance. Sharapova was selected as an ambassador for her work related to the Chernobyl disaster. Former world number 1 Roger Federer won the Stefan Edberg Sportsmanship Award at the ATP Awards on Thursday for the 12th time in his career. The award is given to players who display the spirit of the sport on the court. Roger Federer also won the fans' favourite award for the 14th consecutive time in his career. That's it on this edition of the Bulletin. Have a good evening.